The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report. We have a really eclectic and exciting show tonight.
My name is Oded Rose. I've been born in Israel 50 years ago. I'm actually a CEO of an Israeli company that sells Israeli technology all over the world. But my passion is creating and now starting a school, an international school that will bring students, starting next month, students from all over the world, at 11th and 12th grade to study here in Israel the International Baccalaureate. It's a very well-known international diploma for high school. It's accepted all over the world by all the universities. And we are going to bring 100 students every year to a boarding school right here in Israel. And 20% will be Israelis. 20% will be non-Israeli Arabs, and 60% from the rest of the world. We already have now 85 students who will start the first year, and they are coming from over 30 countries, including Palestinians and other Arab countries and Muslim countries, and literally from all continents. We have from Asia, we have from all of Europe, from Africa, we have from North America, South America. And I'm a person of dream. I dream at night, and I get up in the morning and I say, "Oh, I had this dream. I have to do something about it." I didn't go the route you took in life. I took another route of technology, of science, and now of education. I believe my life mission is to create this school, and this is just the first school. I hope to have other schools like that around the world that will be centers of change, of regional change. I will give you an example. There's a wonderful school that very few people know about in South Africa. It's called the African Leadership Academy. It is the same model as ours. 2 years, 11th and 12th grade. They bring students only from Africa, from the 50 African states, and they bring them together, and it's a school of leadership, because they believe that they need to create a strong leadership in Africa that will help take this continent with all its vast resources and create a better environment, a better society for the African people. And that's what this school is there to do. And it's been running now for 5 or 7 years. And now they're starting another layer. They're going to create the African Leadership Universities. And they're opening the first university in Mozambique, and in 10 years they hope to have 20 universities. And in 10 years they hope to have 250,000 graduates of the African leadership system, the academy and the universities. And by that they are hoping to start to make a difference in Africa. We are here in the Middle East. I'm an Israeli. I'm concerned about peace, about people living here, that my 4-year-old son in 14 years, he will not have to fight anymore. But I'm hoping that something like what we are doing will help to make a difference, because it will show people that it's possible. Why not? Why not? You know, it's a good question. I think what you're referring to is, why is it called the Eastern Mediterranean and not the School of the Middle East? I think School of the Middle East has a very heavy connotation, you know? It's like full of religious, historical, political connotations. And Eastern Mediterranean, you think of the blue sea, you think of vacation, you think of something positive. And I didn't want it to be very politically related, the name. So that's why we chose a different name. We have Palestinians, We have a student from Saudi Arabia, we have one from Pakistan, one from Afghanistan, and in our summer course that we have every year now for the last 5 years, this year we have Moroccan students, Jordanian students. Last year we had one student from Iraq, from Baghdad, who came with an Iraqi passport with a special permit. We had Moroccan students, we had Egyptian students. And we've been doing now this for several years, the summer courses. And this year we're starting the first year of the school. The school's name is Eastern Mediterranean International School. And its mission is to use education as a force for peace and sustainability in the Middle East. With the Palestinians, who are the vast majority of the Arab students, we have a special partnership with a local Palestinian NGO in Ramallah. And we are working together. It's an educational and peace organization there, and we've been in partnership now. And they know all or most of the high schools in the West Bank. They know the principals, they know some of the teachers, and they approach those schools and ask them to nominate students, because the International Baccalaureate that we will teach is known in the West Bank. It's known all over the world, and people would like to do it. It's a big attraction. We also offer full scholarships. Almost all the students get either 90% or 100% scholarship in our school. The funds are coming from various sources. Some are coming from the Ministry of Education itself, that is supporting 100% of our students. It's a special relationship we have with the Ministry of Education. They are very supportive of this project, and again, very open-minded. They believe, I don't know if you know, the current slogan of the Ministry of Education is "Ha'acher hu ani." The other is me. And actually it was nicely said by the Director General of the Ministry that there can't be anything more "Acher hu ani," more other is me, than our school. Because you bring people literally from all over the world, different cultures, different religions, and they all come because they want to come. They go away from their families, and they come here for 2 years because they want to be part of this very special, very unique experience, and something that will hopefully make a difference in our region and maybe in other places in the world. Those students and their families believe in this mission. They believe that they are there as soldiers of peace, and they want to be soldiers of peace, those students and their families. There are concerns, I'm not hiding this, and there are some fears, but this is not a new model. I'm not inventing a model. Me, myself, I was in a school like that when I was 16. I was very lucky, very fortunate to be chosen to represent Israel in a school like that 30 years ago in Canada. And I went there were 200 students in 2 years from 80 different countries, including one Palestinian, one Egyptian, and one Israeli, just the three of us. And I came back, after my military service, I said, we should have a school like that here, because here it's where it matters. Canada, it's great, but you want to teach the Canadians how to live in peace with the Americans, or there's a school in Norway. Do you want to teach the Norwegians how to live in peace with the Swedish? It's great, but where you really need to do it, it's here. So I said, and that was 25 years ago when I started thinking about it, and I had this dream for a long time, and now this dream, fortunately, is coming to fruition. When I was a student in Tel Aviv University, I decided I have to do something about this. And I said, okay, I cannot open the school right away. This was in the middle of the Intifada, 1992, before the Oslo agreements. I said, what am I going to do? So I came up with the idea, let's do a summer project. And let's see if it's possible. A lot of people told me, nobody can open a school like that in Israel because nobody will come here. Definitely no Arabs will come here. And I said, I don't believe that. I think there are enough people who believe in peace and want to be together and want to work towards peace. And I created this summer course in the Negev. I did it in Sde Boker, together with the Ben Gurion University, with the Midreshet Sde Boker, and brought 6 Palestinians, 6 Israelis, and 20 students from 10 countries in Europe. 30 kids. I was maybe 25 at the time, or 27 at the time. I had no clue about business. I had no clue about how to raise money. And somehow I managed to do that. I raised about $30,000 to pay for all that. And the students came, and I want to tell you, other than my 2 years in Canada when I was 16, which was an amazing experience, the second most amazing experience, again, other than my kids being born, of course, I must say that, was this experience of bringing those students together in the middle of the Intifada. I got a special permit from Aluf Pikud Merkaz, from the general of the Central Command, to bring those students in from Ramallah. All of them were in from Ramallah. And they came, and they stayed. And you know, I'll tell you a small story. It was an incredible experience for me and for them. I got one of the Palestinian students, who was 16, never learned how to swim. Didn't know how to swim. And there was a swimming pool in Sde Boker, and every day we stop around 12, and we have a few hours of rest because it was so hot in the summer. And I took, there were two kids who didn't know how to swim. This Palestinian boy, Aziz, his name was, and a girl from Bulgaria didn't know. So I taught them how to swim. And then after a week, I took them to Eilat. And we snorkeled in the Red Sea over the Japanese gardens. You know, it's a nature reserve there. I'm a diver and a marine scientist, so I took them to see this. And we for about 1 hour, we were swimming like this. The Bulgarian girl and the Palestinian boy and me, just swimming over the coral, and I was explaining to them. And then after this course ended, I got a letter. Now remember 1992, the middle of the Intifada. A letter from Aziz, and he wrote to me, I don't remember exactly how he wrote, but he said, I felt that you were my older brother. You showed me that there are worlds that I didn't know even existed. And he referred both to the underwater world, but also to the world of peace. So this is an anecdote to a long answer to your short question, how they felt. It's you know, there's this guy called Mark Zuckerberg, invented a great thing called Facebook. They called me the Facebook animal. Because of necessity, I started working in the Facebook, and other people who are now working with me. And we are reaching people all over the world, and it's not very difficult. You reach people, you can advertise, you can target groups that have special interests, and that's what we do. And we reach, I tell you, we have in 3 months, tens of thousands of likes on our Facebook page. And we got students, we got hundreds of applications, or hundreds of people who asked about information. I think we had about 200 applications, and we selected 80 or 85 students from that. How do we select them? They have to have good grades, so they have to bring a proof of their school diploma. They have to be reasonable English, doesn't have to be perfect English, but reasonable, because the International Baccalaureate, the IB, is a very tough program. They have to show proof of community involvement and leadership. Now, at age 15, 16, you can't expect them to be leaders of the world, but they have to show something. And they all have to go through at least 2 interviews over Skype with our staff. We have a selection committee that they have 1 interview. If they pass the first interview, they go through a second interview that also has the school psychologist, school advisor. And she sometimes can see if there's some people who have, I wouldn't call problems, but issues. So we have all this. We need a couple of recommendations from the school principal, from the teacher. We ask for them to write an essay, things like that. First of all, we had an international search for the director of the school. And we're very fortunate to find Mr. John Potter, who has over 30 years of experience in education, international education, and especially he has 15 years of running schools in Muslim countries. In the last 10 years, he started and ran a school in Turkey, in Izmir in Turkey, an international school, and he was the principal. Before that, he worked in Dubai and in Malaysia or Indonesia. We have 3 other teachers who are non-Israeli, and about, I think 9 or 10 who are Israeli, but most of them have international backgrounds. So either they are new immigrants from various countries or have lived in other countries, and they all can teach in English. We are in partnership with the Tel Aviv University, and we are together with Tel Aviv University are developing a very unique program that is also being approved by the Ministry of Education as an experimental program. And we are developing a program that will combine entrepreneurship, sustainability, and peace, these three elements. We are going to provide the children with, or the students with skills of entrepreneurs, how to create and how to take dreams into reality, and to address issues around sustainability, which there are a lot of big issues of sustainability, water and other things here, economic issues, social issues, and peace. And these three elements, yes, we're going to give them those skills, those tools, how to dream and then take those dreams into reality. We call our school the School of Change, because we want those students to be agents of change. It's going to be huge. It's going to be hugely successful because the kind of partners that we have. The Ministry of Education is fully behind us. The Foreign Ministry is fully behind us. They ask all the consulates to help us. You ask how we got students. The consulates all over the world, 100 consulates, send invitations to high school to send candidates. All the students will live in dorms in Akfar Yarok. They live 4 in a room, which is the standard in these kind of schools. Girls in one wing and the boys in another wing, 4 in a room. So they're all separated, especially because of Muslims and some other religious students. It's it's a big concern. And you know, we had here a visit from the Palestinian families. All the Palestinian students came to visit us about one month ago with their families. It was an incredible day. They came here with 3 buses because they had to come from Tulkarem, from Ramallah, and from Bethlehem. They had to come in 3 different buses because you can't get them all in one place. And they came for a day to our school. They had breakfast, and then they had a tour, and they had questions, and we answered, and then we had some more information sessions. And one of the questions was, you know, how are you going to, you know, make sure that the girls can maintain their tradition? And we told them, here is what we're going to do. They're separate, they have their place to pray if they want, and everything like that. Peace is such a big word, you know, and people have to realize it has to start with a compromise. It has to start with accepting the other side, that the other side are people. And you know, it's unfortunate, but there's very little that is being done in Israel and on the Palestinian side or the Arab side to try and teach the young generation about the other people. Palestinians are talking about themselves, the Israelis are talking about themselves. Each side has its own narrative, and there's very little communication between the two sides on the people level. Our school, the school that we are now starting, is aiming to address that. You know, I want to tell you something. When I started talking to the Ministry of Education about this program, they thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
But now, 3 years later, they are fully behind this program. I was able to slowly get them to understand that it's for the benefit of Israel, to connect Israelis to the world and to bring the world to Israel. It's for the benefit of Israel. Why not? The name of our school is the Eastern Mediterranean International School. We are bringing, it's opening next month, we are bringing 100 students from all over the world. 20% are Israeli, 20% are non-Israeli Arabs, mostly Palestinian from the West Bank, and 60% are from over 30 different countries around the world, from Latin America, North America, all over Europe, Africa, Asia, and even as far as New Zealand. We have students who are coming from all over the world, and they all come because they believe in the mission of the school, which is to use education as a force for peace and sustainability in the Middle East. Thank you very much for having me on your show, Leon.
The Leon Charney Report congratulates the team of BDC, The Price of Peace, and Leon Charney on the New York Emmy Awards win. The documentary reveals the true story of the negotiations leading up to the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time, the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. Watch it on Hulu.com or buy the special feature edition DVD at select stores.
Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at Audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish.
We have a great show tonight. We have Steve Forbes with us, and you don't have to go any further than that. Steve, it's always a pleasure to see you. You have a brand new book out. It's called Capitalism Will Save Us: Why Free People and Free Markets Are the Best Answer in Today's Economy. Everybody needs this to read, to understand that that Madoff didn't cripple the economy, that the banks didn't take everybody down, and that capitalism works, because we're into what I consider super regulation now. So I have to ask the expert. What do you think, Steve?
Well, we are in an era where, because of the economic crisis, government is going to try to expand its powers. The amazing thing is, even though it was government actions that made this crisis possible, it's the free markets that get the rap for it.
Was it the government's action or inaction?
Initially, it was government action. The Federal Reserve printing a lot of money in the early part of this decade, keeping interest rates artificially low. If they hadn't pumped out so much liquidity, their fuel for the bubble wouldn't have been there. Fannie and Freddie guaranteeing $1.5 trillion of suspect paper didn't help either. And then when the crisis hit in the fall of 2008, the regulators come in with this thing called mark-to-market accounting, which devastated bank capital far beyond the losses they were going to take on subprime mortgages.
Let's explain mark-to-market. I'm not sure everybody understands it. What that means is you take the value the same day of what the asset is and you mark it to that level. So if you had a house that was worth $2 million, all of a sudden the market says it's worth $800,000, the banks must mark it down, therefore they lose their capital. Right?
It's a pro-cyclical approach, and if you have a distress, it's silly, because capital for regulatory purposes is supposed to be ballast. It's supposed to be reserves for future losses, reserves for future obligations. It's not supposed to be a day trading account. And we hadn't done it since the Great Depression, and we hadn't had a bad bank panic since the Great Depression till we repealed it in 2007.
It's a big issue, and what Steve is saying is that the banks are not trading companies, although they eliminated the Glass-Steagall Act, which put them into the brokerage business and insurance. I was guilty of that because Mario Cuomo had a big panel on it called the DeWin Commission. We integrated all that. But if the banks don't have enough capital, then there's a flight, and a lot of problems occur. And capital is an accounting process. That's really what he's saying. And so if the accounting rules make you mark everything to market every day, you have fluctuations that you can't determine. If you run a bank, you can't even determine what the heck's going on. It's tough.
Well, and that's why a lot of these losses that we read about are not
So
actual
who
cash
passed
losses.
this rule? But who passed this through? How did they get there?
The SEC and the Financial Accounting Standards Board. There was a reaction to Japan in the 1990s, zombie loans and the like. But it was a misreading of what happened in Japan, and by treating it as a day trading account, when the market started to go down, banks were losing money even though the assets were good. Money was being paid on them, principal and interest was being paid, yet they had to mark it down in value, which meant they were withdrawing loans from the market.
It sounds so simple. Why doesn't anybody listen? Larry Summers doesn't understand this?
None of them did, but earlier this year there were hearings in Congress where some of the Congress people did, and they beat the brains out of the SEC and the Financial Accounting Standards Board, so they amended it, which at least stopped the bleeding. The bottom line is those were government actions. Those weren't free markets suddenly going off the rails.
No, you're absolutely right. By the way, in Florida, banks, I saw 3 or 4 banks there that had to mark down their assets, and there was really nothing wrong with them, to about 30% of their value, and then they were short in capital, they're trying to raise capital. There's a whole panic going on down there. And they're just waiting, and they're crying, these bankers. They're going out of business. These small banks in Florida are really going out. They gave all this money out, and they can't recoup, and the government comes in and says, you got to mark down, you don't have enough capital, they can't raise capital, they're too small. Citibank raised $20 billion today. I'm not sure I'm excited about that.
Hey, shareholder dilution, what's that between friends?
Oh yeah, it's a spread over the whole United States, you know. You could buy Coca-Cola for $3.20. They came out at $3.15 for their new stock today. Did you know that?
Yes.
$3.15. Wow.
A couple of years ago, you'd added a 0 to that.
That's true. Wow, what they're going to mark to market. And there's a new chairman for Bank of America. I know him, Monahan. Pretty intelligent guy. Hopefully they'll bring that bank up and stabilize the country a little bit. Okay, so have people lost confidence in capitalism? Is that the reason you wrote this book in a question-answer form, which is very readable, and it's a lot of fun, by the way.
Well, thank you. Well, when Elizabeth and Ames and I started this, the crisis hadn't hit.
Is that right?
We were going to do a primer, and the crisis hit, and so we changed the emphasis on it. And one of the things we discovered, Leon, is that it wasn't just this economic crisis, but major crises in the past all have their origins in bad government policy. The great inflation of the 70s, obviously the Fed printing too much money. Great Depression of the 1930s, Smoot-Hawley tariff, which destroyed global trade, massive tax increases. Do you realize Herbert Hoover not only raised the income tax from 25% to 63% as the economy was going down?
It's a good thing I didn't know him.
Yeah, me too. But, you know, they put excise taxes, including a check. If you wrote a check in the early 1930s, you had to pay a stamp tax on it.
Well, this will rile you. How about a transfer tax on every time you trade a stock?
Well, that's a good way to encourage investing. So, yes, let's not blame Mr. Hoover. His ghost lives in Congress today.
They're talking about that in Congress now.
Herbert Hoover lives.
Would that be insane?
It would be insane. Well, first it would drive trading offshore, as you know, and it would hurt investment here. It hurts pensions here. It's nuts, but that's what happens.
Is it a true statement of fact that if the dollar is weak, which I know you're against very much, America is looked in the world as very weak? Is it synonymous?
Yes. As you know, economics has political repercussions. We certainly saw that in the 1930s. The bad guys rise up when the good guys are in economic distress. We saw it in the 70s. The U.S. was in retreat. The mullahs take over in Iran, communists in Nicaragua and Africa, Angola, Mozambique. Yes, bad things happen. And so if the U.S. stays weak, it's not good for civilization.
You get some people, though, who say, you know, the weak dollar gives you a lot of good export. What's your argument against that?
It's artificial and therefore short-lived. You know, let's make it simple. If you're selling a bottle of wine for 4 loaves of bread, and suddenly you notice you're only getting 2, you're going to readjust your prices. So yes, a weak dollar artificially lowers the price of your exports, some of them. But a lot of exports are bought for value added, not because they're commodities. We've been trying this, Leon, with Japan since the early 1970s. So the dollar today is worth about 20 cents of 20% of what it was in the early 70s. We still have a merchandise trade deficit with Japan. If that kind of thing worked, Argentina and Zimbabwe would own the world today if cheapening your money was the way to wealth and big exports.
Tell me, Brazil has a good economy now, Steve?
Brazil has it's amazing. They, as you know, a few years ago, they elected a socialist.
Right.
Who turned out to be more of a capitalist than some of our presidents.
Oh, you think Obama's socialist, capitalist? What is he today?
Everyone loves the word or hates the word neo, so I'll call him for the moment a neo-socialist.
Are you fearful that he may, you know, Neil Weinberg of your magazine was on last week. He was really nervous about the fact that the trend of Obama is towards socialism. Not socialism, but a social contract or something.
Well, it's a very much of a welfare state European, Western European style approach, which kills innovation, kills job creation. Before this crisis hit, Europe's unemployment was twice that of the United States, and among young people, it was 3 times. So you don't get good job creation, you don't get innovation. Germany and France, for example, should be at the forefront of high technology, but they're not major players.
Because they have all the social stuff going on. In France, you never work. In August, you drink wine, and then you get sick for 6 weeks, so you get 6-week leave, and then before you know, you're on Social Security, and they go broke. So what's the answer? I mean, people have no confidence today. Consumer confidence is down. Unemployment is up. If you're at 10%, there's no way you can recover in this economy. 10% unemployment is impossible. So they create stimulus plans. Did they do that correctly?
No. Stimulus plans, the way they do them, is the equivalent, Leon, of taking a bucket and filling it with water from one end of the pool and pouring it in the other end with some evaporation in between. It does not increase the supply of water in the pool. The way you increase the supply is have incentives for people to bring in hoses to put water in the pool, which means a stable currency, low tax rates, and then you'll get more water. But if you just simply slosh the water around, it doesn't do any good.
So you need people to create initiatives which create business, which is what made America great. And,
exactly.
You know, we go back in history, and they went to California for gold, right? Or they went to Oklahoma for oil. So people took risk, and they need the ability to take risk and opportunity. The banking system does not lend today, Steve. They do not lend, I can tell you that. And so people are choked, and they don't know which way to go. And a lot of people, there are really a lot of sad cases, I'm sure you know about, that have stymied everybody. And can you say it's the government? Can you say it's the world economic problem? Can you say it's all the wars that are going on? It costs $1 million a year to keep a soldier in Afghanistan. I don't know what it costs in Iraq. Probably the same. How do we balance those things?
Well, if the U.S. gets its economics right, then the rest of the world starts to follow suit. You know, in the early 1980s, you remember people were very depressed. Reagan and Volcker finally killed the inflation. Tax rates were cut. The U.S. economy came back very strongly. Strong foreign policy, and eventually led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. And parts of the world that had never had entrepreneurial free markets, India, China, they start to blossom. The world starts to blossom.
Yeah.
So it works. So if we stabilize the dollar, which can be done, just stop printing so much. If we cut tax rates instead of raising them, as they're going to do next year, and to get off this kick on trying to nationalize health care and some of these other crazy things, you'd see this economy, which is full of innovation, come roaring back, and the rest of the world would take note.
I know he's not your favorite, Jimmy Carter, but I was in his White House helping him on Camp David, and interest rates were about 18 or 20%. I wasn't studying it at that time. How did it get that high? Why was it that high? Remember that guy Kahn, the economic guy? He wore wind buttons. Do you remember that?
I remember wind buttons.
18%.
It was the Federal Reserve and other central banks printing a lot of money. Milton Friedman had it right. And
But Volcker was, who was?
Volcker came in 1978, early 79.
Well, that's when Carter lost, I mean, in
And,
1980, yeah.
And he started, but it was very late in the day.
But he's in there now, basically, as an advisor.
Well, they don't pay attention to him, which is why he's upset right now.
He's too tall. All right, I got to cut for a break. And then he has some great aphorisms here. I'm going to read them to you, and then Steve will answer them. It's a lot of fun. And we need as much time as we can for Steve. He should probably be the Secretary of the Treasury or the President. He ran for President, if you remember, did not reasonably well. And I guess the country would have been a little bit better off. At least the rates would have been lower and less printing of dollars. Who knows what happens in the future? Maybe there's a future with Steve Forbes for the presidency. We'll ask him. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney, talking to whom I think is a great man and a great economist. And I'm sure he'll agree with me. No matter how great an economist you are, you can never do everything correctly because political situations just change so rapidly that you really don't know what's going on. And who knew that? Look, you started this book before the whole collapse started, and you had to revise the whole book. Unbelievable. All right, you have the rap on capitalism. You talk about the rap and then the reality. The rap, capitalism is a moral dog-eat-dog system founded on greed and the survival of fittest. And your answer is?
It's actually a humane system that allows people to move ahead and take risks and improve their standard of living.
Capitalism, the world's most humane economic system, promoting the democratic values of a free and open society, hard work, cooperation, generosity, charity, and devotion to the rule of law.
And what do you think about it? Adam Smith pointed it out 230 years ago. When you do a transaction, both parties have to get something out of it. You go to a restaurant, you want the food, restaurant wants your money, they give you the food, you give them the money, you both get something out of it. It's not greed. Both parties get something out of it.
Maybe the guys in Washington think Adam Smith did cough drops.
Probably.
The rap, the free market is brutal. Big players with too much power crush small competitors.
Actually, in an open market, you get competition, and small people come and become big people. You look at Microsoft. What was that 30 years ago?
Look at Google.
Look at Google. 10 or 12 years ago, if you'd said, lay on the word Google, people would say, is that a number? And now it's one of the biggest companies in the world and gobbling up everything, it seems.
You write about Google in the book.
We do indeed. An example of innovation, spirit of innovation, two guys, young guys. Look what they've created.
All right, your answer here is democratic capitalism can be disruptive and unpredictable, but the process of, quote, creative destruction is critical to a healthy economy and society. I think you're right on that. I think in order to have a creative society, you must have risk and reward, and sometimes you just don't make it. It goes the way. But that's the beauty of capitalism. It gives people the opportunity to take the risk, and that creates creativity.
It brings out
innovation.
You hit the word. Creativity is absolutely critical, and there's no other system that allows the kind of creativity you get here. For example, the microchip, which symbolizes the information age. What's it based on? Sand.
That's true.
Silicon.
If you go to Israel, by the way, you find a bunch of really high-tech. I think per capita they do the best of everybody in creative technology.
They're boxing way above their weight. It's amazing in technology.
Yeah, they really are great.
Global powerhouse, nation of 6-7 million people.
The rap, the rich are a privileged group that prosper at the expense of everybody else. That's not true. Go ahead, but you say rich people make their fortunes by creating opportunity and wealth for others.
Well, again, think of it. If you want money, the only way you get it in a true free market is if you provide a product or service that somebody else wants.
Right.
So it's, again...
It's called supply and demand, if you remember, right? You studied that at Princeton, I'm sure.
You learn it as a kid.
When you have a tough dad, right?
Exactly.
A wrap. Okay, taxes. You're consistent. Taxes are an investment in the common good. They are the price we pay for humane society. Not only do tax cuts deprive governments of needed revenue, They mainly helped the rich who needed them the least. The reality: excessive taxation undermines the common good.
Well, what it does, what you have to remember, is that taxes are a price and a burden. You know, the tax you pay on income is the price you pay for working, tax on profit, price you pay for being successful, tax on capital gains, the price you pay for taking risks that work out. So the idea is very basic. If you lower the price of good things like productive work, risk-taking success, you get more of them. Raise the price, you get less of them. So amazing thing is, government comes out ahead when it reduces the tax burden, reduces tax rates, and yet what's their response? They always want to raise them, always trying to find new ways to pick your pockets.
When you were campaigning, one of your big issues was flat tax. What kind of reception did you get about that?
People love the idea of simplicity. As you know, the current tax code today is 9.5 million words and rising. Nobody knows what's in that code. Several years ago, we cite Money Magazine did a survey. They took a hypothetical family's finances, gave the numbers to the 46 top tax preparers in the country, and you know what they got back? 46 different returns, 46 different estimates, thousands of dollars of difference. No two experts could agree. They make their living doing this.
Why do, I guess people have vested interest in what they do. You know, you have a huge civil service, you have a huge lobby, and to modify the system, is it possible in the United States to modify the system? Now we're going into healthcare. No one has read that bill. I worked in the Senate. Senators don't read bills. Believe me, I think you know that.
Yes.
I worked 5-6 years in the U.S. Senate for Vance Hartke of Indiana.
Sure.
They don't read bills. They go to cocktail parties, a lot of Christmas parties, give out a lot of postcards with their pictures on it and everything. They don't read the bill. Some of the staff maybe read the bill. Then you find out that in the healthcare bill, somebody's got a fish pond for halibut steak in Afghanistan, in Alaska, who knows what. Another guy's doing a football field in Montana, and they're all add-ons. I think Reagan vetoed all that, didn't he, during his administration?
He did.
Line vetoes, right?
He would veto bills that had these kinds of pork in them.
Right.
And whereas sadly George W. Bush and this president, they signed those bills.
All right, healthcare. What do you understand anything about it? You have the major economic magazine maybe in the world, and I'm sure people want to hear and listen and read. But do they know? Can anybody write about it? Do we know enough about it?
Well, we have a whole chapter, long chapter in the book on it.
In this book?
In this book, chapter 7.
You revise it because he was starting in the healthcare, or you always thought it was an issue?
I've always been an advocate of getting more free markets into healthcare. You know, they always talk about we need government to do justice in healthcare. Instead, what we should be doing is allowing entrepreneurs to create more health care, more supply. You know, show how crazy the system we have is. If you go to a doctor, you go to a hospital, you go to a clinic, and you ask what it's going to cost, they figure either you're uninsured or you're a nutcase. Why would you want to know what it costs?
Because you take out your insurance card.
And everything else you do. You find out what it costs, what you're going to get for your money. So the system doesn't have the kind of productivity, innovation that you get in the rest of it. It's a hybrid. It's not real free enterprise. You get free enterprise, we turn healthcare into from a liability into one of the greatest growth industries ever. And we'd get more for less. People would figure out how to deliver more for less, like they did with cell phones. You know, 20 years ago, what was a cell phone? As big as a shoebox.
Well, that's right.
Expensive,
that's
clunky.
Exactly right.
Today, there are 4 billion of them. They can do everything.
Not only that, on certain cell phones, people can watch our show.
Good thing.
They can
And
walk
anyone
around.
anyone can afford them. Haiti, 2 million people have cell phones. India, tens of millions of people, poverty, cell phones. Africa, women wear around their necks
So
cell phones.
I don't understand why you're not president.
Well, together maybe we'll maybe we'll do it.
Joe Lieberman sure remember I told you the other day we had a conversation and I said to you, Joe Lieberman could be the most important guy in the United States because he might stifle that whole health thing. And I know Lieberman, I believe he's sincere. I believe he really believes in what he's doing, and they're being very nasty to him by scapegoating him. His wife's name is Hadassah. He's getting terrible blogs, anti-Semitic blogs against him. It's ugly. It's really ugly out there. And I think he's really standing up to what he believes is the proper thing to do. And he was betrayed by the Democrats.
They're the ones who threw him out.
They threw him out. What do they owe him? I mean, Harry Reid can go around with 14 chips from Nevada, but who cares, you know? And I don't know. I don't know if it's good or bad, health care. I have no idea, you know, whether it's good or bad. I'd like people call me all the time and ask me. I said, I don't know. Who knows? No one knows enough about what's going on.
Well, that's one of the things about true free markets is they work best when no one's running them.
That's true.
Spontaneous cooperation. And in healthcare, if we allow that, like we'd see more examples like Walmart doing prescriptions at $4. People doing little clinics where you can go into the registered nurse if you have, cut yourself or something instead of going to the doctor or the emergency room. More cheaper drugs. Or take LASIK surgery for the eyes. That costs less in real terms than it did 10 years ago because the patient writes the check. Cosmetic surgery's grown sixfold in the last 15 years. Great technological advances, and yet you haven't had the kind of medical inflation. You get free market reforms like allowing people to buy insurance around the country, equal tax treatment, you'll see this thing blossom. But show how crazy it is. I live in New Jersey, where we have like New York crazy healthcare regs. A family policy that cost me $18,000 in New Jersey, I can buy in Pennsylvania, virtual equivalent for $7,000.
Is that right?
Yet it's illegal for me to go in Pennsylvania and buy. I can buy a car in Pennsylvania, buy a house, open a bank account.
It's not legal for you to go to Pennsylvania? No. Why is that? A regulation?
Yeah, yeah.
And what's the reason? A lobby from the insurance people?
Yeah, yeah. So why not open it up? How about the interstate commerce clause?
That's unbelievable. I never knew that.
So if you live in New York, why shouldn't you be able to buy a policy in California if you want? Fine, say that. I like that. Why can't you buy it?
Okay, if you're incorporated in New York and your health plan is under Forbes and it's a New York plan, can Jersey object to that?
Fortunately, if you're of a certain size, you come under ERISA, which, as you know, was passed in 1974, which gets you out from some of these crazy regs. But if you're an individual, you're stuck.
Wow, that's something I never. Wow, that's well, you have a new governor there. Maybe he can help you out. You know,
he's going to try. He's going to try to reform that. Chris Christie.
You know, any governor that doesn't come from Hudson County, where I was born. There's a guy named Mayor Haig. He ran the place.
So his nickname was "I'm the Law." Frank, I'm the Law. Haig.
And he really did it that way. You know, it was unbelievable. But that's something I've never. Phew.
Well, talk about Hudson County. Remember a former governor of New Jersey? I think it was Brendan Byrne.
Yeah.
Said he has a great wit. He says, when he dies, he wants to be buried in Hudson County so he can continue his public service.
A lot of dead ballots in Hudson County. They really turn them out well. What about Chicago? How about Mayor Daley? What's his gig? Are they okay now, or nobody knows?
On the local level, Chicago politics works. They know how to run that city. They make it work. They didn't let it go the way of Detroit and some other cities. So, but nationally, I'm not sure the Chicago system will work.
All right, Steve, you travel all around the world. Who would be the best prototype that the United States would follow today? Is there any that has really a good capitalism system and they don't really become onerous?
Well, there are countries that have things like the flat tax, 25 countries.
25 countries?
Ranging, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria,
so if they
Russia.
Do they have an income tax on top of it or not?
No, just a simple single flat rate. And collections go up when they did it. Hong Kong's had a variation for 60 years. The top rate in Singapore is about 20%.
Yeah, that I know.
Money flows in.
So if people really look carefully and studied it carefully, they might come to that conclusion. But that takes a lot of courage, and I'm not sure that's on the plate right now.
Well, that's why I'm an agitator. Try to get public opinion.
Well, I think you're doing better than that. I think you're informing people because they don't know the truth. And you know, people watch this show or watch other shows, and we try to be really informative and give people time, but usually you get a sound bite and then they say, I'm sorry, I gotta go. It's usually a good-looking girl who doesn't know that Palestine is really in the Middle East, you know. I once went on a show on one of the major channels, and she says to me, Leon, brief me a little bit. Where is this Palestinian issue? Where is Palestine? It's a true story. So yeah, at least you know where you are. But now let's talk a little bit of politics. The book in London is that Obama will be a one-termer. You know, everybody, you can bet on anything in London. You could bet whether this show is top 100 in the world or not. So you think he's a one-term, or it's too early to tell?
It looks like he'll be a one-termer, but then you have to remember what Bob Strauss once said.
I remember Bob Strauss very well.
He was chairman of the Democratic National Committee.
He was also a Middle East negotiator who called me into his office one day. He says, now what do I do here? He says, I'm supposed to be a negotiator. It's a true story. He and Linowitz, they were negotiators, and Strauss says, you know, I'm just going to go over there and tell these guys what to do. And you know what his success was? When I finished, he finished his term, he says, Leon, I got great shirts in Egyptian cotton. That's what he told me. He couldn't move a stone, and I was to brief him. They asked me to brief him the first day he got the job. Bob Strauss was a Jewish guy who was an FBI agent originally, and then he became a powerhouse in Texas. His sister became the mayor of Dallas, Texas. He was a funny guy. He's still alive, by the way.
Yes, he is. But in 1972, he said, when he was chairman of the Democratic Party, he said, we Democrats could beat Nixon in a landslide if we didn't have to run anyone against him.
He was fun. No, Strauss was, he was fun, but he must be 90 years old now. But I think in his heart he was more of a Republican than he was a Democrat, you know.
He had his feet on his ground.
He really knew what was going on. He liked money and he knew how to make it. So
yes, he did.
I'd say he was a capitalist with a badge. Geithner, let's take the whole list. Ben Bernanke's going to be reconfirmed. I like that he's Man of the Year. For me, I like Bernanke. I don't know.
Well, I don't like his weak dollar policy. I don't like Geithner's weak dollar policy. So I want a strong and stable dollar. It's like minutes in an hour. It should be 60 minutes in an hour, not don't change it each day. Make it simple.
Who controls the economic policy today, do you think?
I think it's Treasury and the Fed.
Do you believe they'll change the way the Fed operates? Are they trying to legislate that now?
Well, what the Fed should do, the Fed should just have one job or two jobs. One is a stable and strong dollar and dealing with panics. Bank regulation, put in another agency. They can't do it. And things like check clearing, somebody else can do that. They don't need to do that. Focus on one thing.
Steve, it's always great.
Leon, good to see you.
Thank you. We'll see you when you're president of the United States. No?
When you're president, you know.
Oh my God, then my crew do. They won't know what to do. They'll be lost.